So once we've uploaded the firmware and the sketch files, the controller is actually running, and what we need to do now is we actually need to log into the controller, and we need to configure all the devices that are there, or etc. So we're going to use the management server for that, and the management server controls whether or not these things are enabled, whether they're disabled, and whether we can start and stop them. So we're going to log in, have a look. We're also going to handle some of the devices. Now, we were not able in the controller config file to actually specify these devices because it's included in the firmware. Other things, such as the optionals, aren't, but these are included by default. And following the configuration, we'll then have a quick look at how we set up Windows, the ALPACA server, the ASCOM drivers if you want, Linux and INDI. So still a lot to cover. Now that we've programmed the controller with the firmware and we've uploaded the sketch data files, now it's time to do the post configuration. So what we need to do is open a web browser, and we need to go to the management server. For me, this is the URL, and it's on port 6060. So we can go there, and we should be asked for a user, and we'll be asked for a password, and the default password and username is admin, so we'll sign in. And this is the first server page of the management server, and what we need to do is we need to go to the motor tab, and we need to make sure that our position and our next steps is correct. We need to make sure that we put the motor speed to fast, and we also need to make sure that step mode is enabled. Step mode is set correctly, and I'm just using full step modes. And lastly, that the step size is enabled and that the step size has been set correctly. And for me, that's true. If it wasn't, I would actually change it to what I had already worked out, and so that the controller will boot up with the correct settings. Right, next thing is to control the motor speed delay. So if we now use, I'll just open up another tab, and I'll make sure the management server's in this tab as well. Which it is. Now I need to change the page that I'm on to the move page. You don't find this anywhere on the menu. Okay, so this is the management server menu down here in terms of what you can access. The move page is hidden from this because it's really only got one purpose, and that is to set up the motor speed correctly. So here on the move page, it's telling us that we're in a position of 2400, etc. And so what we would do is, with the motor actually connected and 12 volts on, we would use the plus 500 button, which I'll do now, and that will move the controller by 500 steps. The plus means that the direction of movement should be outwards. The focuser draw tube should draw outwards away from the actual focuser body itself, and minus 500 moving in means that the focus draw tube would be moving in towards the focuser body, and I would check to make sure that's the case. If it's not the case, then please don't try to use reverse. Try to swap the stepper wires over. You only need to swap one coil on a stepper motor. If you had red and black as one coil and it was wired red black, you would change it to black red, because the direction is important in terms of the relationship here of going to a lower position number or going to a higher position number. because if you're using a home position switch, which a lot of people do, then the direction is vital that it matches what we are trying to do. So a move towards 0, focus of draw tube must move in, and a move outwards towards max steps means the focus of draw tube must draw outwards, away from the focus of body. And if that's not the case, then it really messes up the home position switch code. So I'm looking here. I've got motor speed set to fast. Here we go, and I've got a value here called delay, motor speed delay, and currently it's set to 4,000. If I find that the stepper motor is sort of a wee bit jerky, then what I can do is try to increase the delay, and if that works, I'd increase it by like 500 a time. So I just enter in a new value like this and go set, and it's now set to 500, and I go back to the move page and I try this all again and see how that works, and it should be an improvement. If it's not and it doesn't make any difference, then, and it's a stepper motor such as being powered by the DR8255, then what you will need to do is you'll need to adjust that little pot to increase or decrease the current through the stepper motor to make it move. If this value is too low, like if you go down to like 2,000, this, and set it to 2,000, and then try the same move, what will happen is that the stepper motor will probably just stay there and vibrate rapidly. It's because the pulses are coming too fast, and the stepper motor just can't keep up. So the reasonable values that have been tested around 4,000 to work for both the ULN 2003 28 BYJ motors, and also satisfactory for a NEMA step motor. Just be aware though that with NEMA motors, which are geared, the planetary geared ones, you're not going to be able to rotate them very fast. What you have to realise is the motor inside, the motor shaft of the actual NEMA motor itself, is burning around at the right speed, but because of the planetary gear reduction, that shaft coming out of the motor gearbox is actually going to be rotating much slower than the actual stepper motor itself. So you have to realise that you're never going to step a planetary geared motor at great speeds, because there's a limitation in the amount of speed that you can do on a NEMA motor. Alright, so we've now got it all configured, and what we can do now is go back through the pages of the management server. Okay, so this was my directory setup for the project, and I now want to go in and extract and install these things. So this is the setup for the Windows program, so I'll install that. It'll ask me when I want to install the log files, so I'll store them on drive D. So that's the Windows app, and of course the address is 172 for me, port 2020, and I know that going back to the management server, that the TCP/IP server is running, so then I can, because the Windows app uses that, so I can connect, and you can see I'm connected and it's displaying various values. It's firmware 306, etc. So that works. In the next video I'll cover the management server in some detail and how in the management server we can set things up. For example, the servers, the ALPACA server, the TCP/IP server, web server. We'll look at how to configure the OTA. We'll look at the input devices, which are primarily the push buttons, the temperature probe, infrared remote, things like that. We'll look at how to configure the display, and then we'll look at 3 important files which, should something go wrong, these in the next video I'll cover the management server in some detail. So we'll look at all the various servers there are, how to set them up, how to enable them, get them going. We'll have a brief look at OTA and how that actually works. We'll look at the configuration of devices such as the push buttons, the infrared remote, things like the in-out LEDs, etc. We'll look at setting up the display, and we'll also look at 3 very important controller config files which hold all the controller settings and are very useful in finding out why things are not working the way you expect them to.